Hello. Just want to let everyone know we're going to get started in a few minutes. And Mary has hit the record button, so we are going to be recording this and we'll start. Maybe we might give everybody an extra minute or two after 3 p.m. Eastern time to jump on, and we'll get started from there. Just to let everybody know that just joined, we're going to get started in a few minutes. We might give folks an extra minute or two. I think there was about 40 RSVP'd. So we have a few more to go to get to closer to that number. Just FYI, this is going to be recorded. So we've hit the record button and this will be available for folks at a later date. And please make sure everybody mute their line. We are going to take questions at the end. But until then, we just ask that everybody mute their lines if they're not speaking. It's 3 o'clock. We're just going to give everybody a few more minutes to jump on. We did have about 40 people RSVP. And we have hit the record button so that we're going to be able to post this recording later. Just as an FYI, we are recording. Just give us a few more minutes to see if we can get any others to join us, and we'll get started. Okay, just about ready to start. We have about 26 of us in the meeting, and we may have a few that join on a little bit late, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time and get started pretty promptly. Just as you were coming in, I was letting everyone know that we are recording this. This is something that we'll have available on the ASBO program website. Might take us a day or two to get those up, but just want to make sure everybody's aware that we are recording. And let's see. I think whenever you're ready, Elnora, you can go ahead and get us started.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Good afternoon. My name is Elnora Thompson. I am the project officer for the 507 program here at EPA. I would like to welcome you to the 2025 EPA OSDBU Grant Informational Webinar. This webinar will be recorded for your guidance. We also have Murray Grover and Paula Hogue, who will provide information also for the grant. Would you both like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thank you,
Mary?
Elle. I'm Mary Grover. I'm the backup project officer for this OSDBU grant here at EPA. Happy to be here and share all this with you today. Paula?
Thank you, Mary and Elle. I am Paula Hogue. I'm the EPA Asbestos and Small Business Ombuds, and I serve as the team program lead. And I've served in this role for many years as far as working in the OSDBU office, the small business office here at EPA. And I'm very familiar with this grant program, serving previously as the project officer as well.
Okay, thank you. Today's webinar will include all the information that is needed for applying for the management of the 507 programs and managing the communication and collaboration of the 507 program. It is an important way to assist small businesses in environmental compliance. The agenda will include the OSDBU grant background, key dates and information, grant.gov, the notice of finding opportunities, key takeaways, and next step, along with Q's and A's. Okay, the 507 program grant history. The National Small Business Environmental Assistance Program started in 1990. The requirements of the contractors is to provide services to manage the national website and training events. In 2016, OSDBU transitioned the funding support through a grant cooperative uh, um, agreement. Kansas State University Pollution Prevention Institute has served as a grantee for the last 5-year grant cycle. The current grant that's in place expired in July of 2025, and the new grant cycle is from August of 2025 through July 2030. Mary?
Thanks, Elle. So on this next slide, we have some key dates and information for everyone, very important. We would like to know ideally by November 1st if you're planning to apply. You can also provide an informal notice today at this webinar when we get to the end of the presentation. You can also shoot us an email. So whatever you're more comfortable with, but we would like to know by November 1st. Additionally, the application submission deadline is December 2nd, so please mark your calendars. The deadline will not be extended, so really important there. And May 2025, we're anticipating notifying who the next grantee is. So that's your rough timeline for this next grant cycle. The eligibility is limited. We have received the okay and heads up to limit this grant opportunity to the SBEEP community there, as explained. So that's wonderful. And that's just about all related to eligibility. So on. Next, I'm going to provide a little overview of navigating grants.gov, how to find the funding opportunity, and what to do when you get there. So
I'm Leanne Briggs with the Pennsylvania Environmental Management Assistance Program, and I'm co-chair for the technical subcommittee, and I'm pinch hitting for Mark this afternoon. I want to thank you all for joining us. Most especially, I would like to graciously thank Jesse Walters for volunteering to present to us on the topic.
Whoever has control, you can just mute everyone.
Exploring
Okay.
the economic and social benefits of effective food waste management. Jesse's with the.
There we go.
Okay. Like I was saying, I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of grants.gov, how to find the funding opportunity, and all that. The links in the presentation are also live. So once we share this presentation, that link goes straight to the funding opportunity. We've made it super simple for you. So here we are. That link goes straight to the OSDBU funding opportunity. Additionally, I just want to show everyone how to find it. So if you're on the main page of grants.gov here, give it a second to load. You want to hit that search grants. This is where things can get a little fuzzy and it looks really overwhelming. My best advice, in the keywords search bar here, type 507 program. Hopefully your caps lock isn't on. 507 program, just hit search. You really don't have to type anything more than that. And it pops up right there. That's the opportunity number for this grant here. And it will open. Same page I had before. So this is where you're going to find everything, all those important details we just went over, eligibility, all of that. So from then you can just hit package. And like I said, this is linked in the presentation. Preview. And then you can download the notice of funding opportunity here. So this is the full instructions. Just hit download and voila, it opens. So a couple important things to note here. Due date reiterated at the top, funding opportunity number for your awareness. And then page 2, we find the beautiful table of contents. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you have a better view here of everything. So it's not too long, but we do recommend you read the entire thing because there are some important details scattered throughout. So we do want to hit home on a couple of key areas today. Most of them reside in section 3, program description. So I'm going to click on that, and Paula's going to talk a little bit about these specific areas we're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like Mary said, this is 19 pages full of really good information, but I will really focus in on the section 3B. I think if you can scroll to that area, that section 3A is very important as well. It talks about some of the requirements for outputs and outcomes, and also aligning the projects, the grant project with the strategic plan here at EPA. And we can talk more about that if that's helpful, but I just wanted to go straight to the section 3B, which is the program goals and objectives, really for what we're looking for to be accomplished under this grant specifically. So as Elnora and Mary were saying, this has been a grant that's actually gone through 2 different 5-year cycles. The first started in 2016. I was the project officer for that. And we have the one that's currently in place that started in 2020. And if you were able to look over those previous notice of funding opportunities, they're pretty similar to what we have in this today. We're continuing on with much of what we've already done in the past for supporting the National SBEEP or 507 program. So I'll just kind of highlight the 3 main areas. The number 1 is, and these don't go in any order of, preference or importance, but communication and information sharing support services for the 507 program members and the regulated small business community. And just to kind of hit home that, the contact list that we have for the state SBEEP programs, the listservs of the various steering committees or subcommittees, any type of assistance to help communication across the country flow for the national program. If you want to scroll up the number, the second one is maintaining the, oh, thank you, maintaining the national sbeep.org website. And so that's, of course, a really big, heavy hitting one of how we all kind of work together is through that national SBEEP website. That's where all the contact lists are housed. That's where a lot of the calendar of events is. Any information about the annual training, of course, any resources or tools that either the SBEEP community or small businesses themselves can access, any type of compliance assistance materials that the SBEEP community supports. So that's a really important one. And then third, finally, is the 507 program annual training. So of course, meeting it annually, that's been a long-standing thing for the SBEEP community. We want to continue to support that here at EPA. We used to be able to do that every year. And when budgets got really tight, we said, listen, we'll try to support that every other year. And so that is still something that we commit to. So the kind of dollar funding amount that we can still commit to that annual training event through this grant is taken into consideration as far as the overall cost. But I want to just kind of stress to everybody that there's a lot of flexibility there. For those that aren't super familiar with the grants process, we're really kind of setting the stage of what we'd like to see and expect as far as like actual outcomes or deliverables, if you will. But how we get there is really dependent on the grantee in terms of their proposal and ways that they can be strategic or creative in how they think they can get us to those end results with the budget that is allowed. That's really up to the best proposal that wins. So just to kind of highlight that for you all, that those are the three main areas: the communication and kind of collaboration resources for the state programs across the country, the national sbeep.org website, supporting that, maintaining that, making sure information is kept up to date and that there's still a lot of great resources and current information to support small businesses and compliance assistance. And then finally, supporting the annual training event. So you'll probably notice that in years past, we've had maybe some slightly different language there, but it's pretty similar. I think the caveat that we're adding is that we know that costs have gone up in some areas, that there's, it would be ideal to be able to increase our funding as time goes on, but unfortunately, we're not able to do that. So the cap of the total funding amount is $550,000, but you'll see some of the language blended here throughout Section 3B that encourages folks to really think strategically about how can we kind of do more with less? How can we continue to provide the great resources that our current grantee has been able to provide, but also, be able to be strategic with some of the new resources that are available, web platforms that more of us have access to, or just different things that can help us kind of save money and still provide the great service and support that we come to expect. So I'll pause there and just say that, that's kind of the crux of the actual requirements for the grant here for this 5-year cooperative agreement. And I'll pass it back over to Mary.
All right, thank you, Paula. That was wonderful. Okay, I do want to highlight just one other part of this NOFO, sorry, that is very important as well. So if you scroll down quite a bit, all the way to 6, application review information. So within this, there is sort of a review criteria or rubric. This is how we will judge and determine who will be the next grantee. So this is kind of what we're looking for. Use it as a rubric, use it to help you build your application, use it as a checklist. So we're kind of here, we're kind of telling you the secret sauce here. So please read this thoroughly and use this to your advantage as well. Additionally, at the end of this funding, the NOFO template, there's some information on grants.gov troubleshooting if you're having issues and what to do if you're running into problems and it's coming close to submission time. So please utilize that firstly, and also the grants.gov help button also. Okay, so I'm going to head back to my PowerPoint here. Get us back to our slide. All right, so just to reiterate a little, this is about what Paula just covered. So, you know, the NOFO has 9 sections. Please review all of it carefully. All the mandatory documents listed in section 4, you do need all of those in order to be eligible to apply there. Active accounts are required with both sam.gov and grants.gov. Like we just went over that section 3A and B, Paula just went through those program description activities and goals. Super important. We need to see that in every application there. Additionally, we do ask that you remember you have to have a linkage to the EPA strategic plan. This is well detailed and laid out in the NOFO. They must include well-defined outputs, outcomes, and performance measures. And that review criteria and submission instructions are found in section 6. Okay. So rounding out here, we've also compiled a list of helpful resources and live links for you. So from the EPA Office of Grants and Debarment, there are some tutorials that you can watch, how to develop a budget if it's your first time putting together a grant and or a budget of this size. Great resource there. Federal Grant Writing Resources Guide, as well as EPA Grants Community Library of FAQs. So please use all of that to your advantage. This first link under grants.gov here, the ASBO funding opportunity, that goes straight to the NOFO on grants.gov for you. Additionally, remember to register for both grants.gov and sam.gov. This link takes you straight to the registration. We've also got the grants.gov online help. Like I mentioned, if you're having problems with submission, please use that, as well as some FAQs for grants.gov. I believe also last year, the National SB Education Subcommittee did a grant writing webinar, and this link goes straight to that recording. So if you haven't watched that yet, we highly recommend that. Paula?
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Mary. You covered some really great information, and I think we've kind of quickly gone through a lot of this because we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to answer questions, to kind of go through and look at things more closely based on the feedback we hear from all of the participants. But just in summary, to cover everything or just things to remember based on our presentation is that the new grant cycle will start in August of 2025 and go through July 2030. So it is a 5-year grant or cooperative agreement. The applications to apply for this grant is going to close on December 2nd, 2024. And I believe that's by midnight or 11:59 p.m. on December 2nd. Some of the highlights that I mentioned or that Mary mentioned as well is the section 2, eligible entities to apply for the grant. So that's a really good one that if anyone's on the call that is not really familiar with who the SBPs are, just wanted to, somehow heard of the webinar, we welcome you. Unfortunately, we are limiting the eligible entities to apply for this grant to only those that are within the Section 507 program of the Clean Air Act. So there's a more kind of defined definition of that in Section 2. Section 3B, that's what I went over in more detail, those 3 main subject areas where we're really kind of hitting home. These are the objectives and goals for this grant or cooperative agreement. And I use those interchangeably. Technically, all cooperative agreements are grants, but not all grants are cooperative agreements. Cooperative agreement is meaning that the agency is working a bit more closely with the grantee. It's still a grant, but there's more of a cooperation between the federal agency and the grant recipient. So section 6B, that's what Mary kind of covered as far as the application and review criteria. And that's really important because that's pretty much giving you the sheet of here's how the grant review panel is going to be scoring your grant proposals. And it's really important, those grant proposals that you submit to us, assuming it's approved and any negotiation in those proposals, those turn into the grant plan. That turns into essentially the plan that you and EPA or our office work from in terms of moving forward for the next 5 years under the grant. So it's really important that you spend some time looking at that and be sure that you understand how each section is being weighted. And finally, section 4A is just more details about the application and content or the format, just giving more detail about what goes into a grant proposal. So finally, all applications have to go through grants.gov. Of course, let us know if you're having issues, and there's a grants.gov help desk as well, but we don't take any written mailed in proposals. They have to be submitted through grants.gov. And that was the main crux of our presentation. And again, I wanted to keep it open and have plenty of time to answer any questions. So this is kind of the Q&A session. I'll get to some of those kind of pre-prepared ones. We already covered it a little bit, but I first wanted to just open up the floor to anyone here live on the call to go ahead and take yourself off mute, or you can put the questions that you have in the chat. Hey, we did an awesome job covering all this. All right, well, while you guys think of maybe some questions or kind of think through how you want to ask it, I'll just cover these two sent in questions. So the first one is the $550,000 in funding availability. Is that for the entire duration of the 5-year grant cycle, or is that $550,000 per fiscal year? And the answer is, make sure you closely look at section 1D of the funding details. It's maybe could be written a little more clear, but that is for the full 5 years. So the grant is not allowed to go beyond the $550,000. Obviously, we don't just put down the $550K on the grant in one shot. It is incrementally funded based on kind of what EPA has as far as a budget availability, but also based on what's proposed in the grant applicant's budget and needs for that first year, that second year. It's usually on an annual basis that we will fund the grant to ideally get to the cap amount of $550K by the end of the 5th year. And this next question, I see Nancy has asked, I'll just go through this one really quick. So who is eligible for the grant? We did get a question that came in asking if there was eligibility for somebody outside of the United States. And unfortunately, this is only available for US, only within the US and only for members within the 507 program. And you can go, I think it's to section 2, where there's more details about the eligibility for the grant opportunity. Okay, so I see a couple chats that have come in, and I know I will go ahead and read them and try to give an answer. Okay, so Nancy asked, how do you recommend the grantee fund the annual training? The past 5-year grant used subawards. Any concerns with this process? That's a good question. We've left that pretty open in the past, as you know, Nancy. Subawards is definitely a great way to kind of shoulder some of that burden of a pretty big pool of resources to put on those training events. And I would say that seemed to have worked pretty well, because previously it seems that, every state wants to kind of share the opportunity to host an annual training event. Everybody likes to kind of move around and try a different location from year to year. So I think it seems that it's worked well to have the main grantee manage, the overall grant, but then as states are interested in hosting, they can serve as a sub-award recipient to help manage some of those more focused on hosting and planning for the event. Or there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. But we know that there's some ground level costs that go into actually hosting the event. So I would say that that worked well, but it's really up to the proposal if they want to kind of take on that themselves and do the full training. That's an option too. I think it'd be good to get some feedback from the rest of the SB community, because like I said, so many folks have gotten used to going to a different state every year. But yeah, it's pretty flexible in that regard. And I see a question from Lloyd about the 100. He's asking, so 110 per year, or is this reimbursed per year based on expenses? So yeah, it's roughly, I mean, if you split 550K into 5 years, it'd be about 110 per year. When the grant is awarded, it is kind of awarding a certain dollar amount that goes into, I guess, like an account that the grantee can pull from and draws down funding as needed from that kind of funding award amount. And I feel like there's a couple folks on the line. Maybe I see Michael Corals joined, and maybe somebody else from the grants office can verbalize this better, but it's not reimbursement. You would get an allotted amount per year, like say roughly 110K. And as you use funds for paying for different things that need to happen under the grant, you would draw down that funding amount from that kind of account. And and that would just kind of renew every year as we move forward in the grant. Did anybody else want to, from EPA, I should say from EPA, kind of chime in on that answer, that could speak more eloquently on it? Feel free.
Hey, Paul, it's Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, yeah, you're right there. So basically, we incrementally fund the grant. The funding is made available to the grantee. As the grantee completes work and they submit their invoices, then they receive reimbursement of the cost of the grant. So
Okay.
you're right there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. Anybody else have any questions or requests to look over the NOFO more closely? Look through anything on grants.gov, anything that we can kind of help to make sure you all feel prepared to generate great proposals for this opportunity. Hi, Jeremy. Feel free to take yourself off mute.
Hi, Paula. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks for the presentation. I guess I had two questions for the group there. One, you mentioned the letter of intent. You said it could be rather informal through an email. And that would be due what, this Friday, November 1st? So something, if any entity wanted to apply, they could just quickly say, hey, we intend to apply for the 507 grant.
That's
Does that sound
correct.
correct?
Yeah, I know the letter of intent sounds very formal, and I mean, we're happy to take, a very well-written formal letter. I think the idea is just to kind of help us with our planning and kind of understanding how many participants may be applying. So it really is, it can be a simple email just to shoot us a line and let us know that you're planning to apply, but it's not something that's held, a requirement. We understand things come up. So if you're thinking about it, let us know. It does help us in the planning process, but it's not a requirement.
Okay. Thank you. My second question, it might be more complicated, but would you be able to touch on the indirect cost rate? I think that was in the solicitation somewhere. I think there might be some sort of paperwork that's required to be provided with the application. Does that sound correct? Or could somebody explain a little bit more about the indirect cost rate?
So I don't think we have like any great on-hand resources for that. Although Mary, I know we have the links to some really great resources on our grants website because we, throughout the NOFO, we added some examples of like a budget and things like that. And the guidance we got from our grants office is just go ahead and refer them to the Office of Grants and Debarments website because they have a plethora of examples that can help people develop their budget, which I would highly recommend. If Mary, do you mind clicking on that and see if we can show folks? Because I'm wondering if there's. What's that?
Thorough. It's pretty thorough. Yeah. So I see direct costs right there, indirect costs already. So yeah, please use this. They've done all this hard work. So
okay.
Looks like they're modules and they're also like posted on YouTube. So just, I think that answers his question pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Anything else? Similar questions to that?
Hey, Paula, I had posted a question whether what kind of reporting is required? Like whether do you expect spreadsheet kind or narrative, the quarterly reporting?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let's maybe go to the NOFO where in this section we did have an area that we kind of outlined the reporting requirements. So you're kind of referring to once the grant is approved and we're moving forward in the grant process, typically grant recipients are held to some sort of kind of ongoing grant reporting. And that helps the agency ensure that the grant is moving along as expected, that we can kind of compare the budget to what the objectives and goals of the grant were throughout kind of the different quarters of the year. I'm trying to see. Can you make it a little bit bigger?
Yeah. So section 8B there. Yep.
I don't know if this one is it. And it's
also be in the review criteria.
Well, I can just say, at least for what we've currently have done in the past, we do request the grantee to submit a quarterly report. I think the current grant that's in place with KSU's PPI program, there was just a lot to cover and kind of keep track of. And so our previous project officer here, Leah Carmichael, she actually proposed putting in kind of an Excel spreadsheet to like a Gantt chart to help keep track of a lot of that and submitted that for the grantee to use because that helped her kind of track how things were going. And that's worked really well. I think with maybe at least a paragraph or two kind of summarizing what's been done over the last quarter. And then, of course, always referring to the budget and how are things going with the budget? Are we on target? Are there areas that we should, watch closely to make sure we're staying on track with the project plan? So that's pretty much the same. I apologize. I feel like there's another area where we cover that more clearly. So I can get back to you guys on that. But again, a lot of this too is, we're open and flexible to what the grant recipient or proposal submits. So if you have a better way to help us stay in communication with how the grant is unfolding, we're open to that. But I think typically we want to have some sort of quarterly check-in and something in writing that can help us check in on the budget and the objectives. I hope that helps.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, see a few more questions. Well, like maybe I'm missing. So Nancy, you said considering the flat funding, what type of activities does the current grant support that could be cut? Okay, that's a good question. I didn't get into too much of the nitty-gritty. I will say that, so just, this is my personal experience and kind of seeing how things have changed quite a bit since this current year grant was started officially in 2020. And so much of how we work has changed since during and after the pandemic. I think previously, when the grant for 2020 had been kind of in the planning process, most folks didn't have access to Teams. I don't think anyone had access to Teams. So how we interacted for those steering committees or subcommittees was really reliant on the grantee hosting those meetings through Zoom. I think given that now most people have Teams and have kind of flexibility in terms of hosting or engaging in a more virtual environment, and since of course we're all across the country, that's super important, but that also leads to us having some ability to be more strategic. Can this be managed outside of the grant? Can the subcommittees and National Steering Committee meet independently of the grantee hosting all of those meetings? Because it does add more time and cost under the grant to host all those. I think there's at least like 5 or 6 per month. And so I know it's not ideal per se, as far as it's really nice to have somebody kind of take care of the IT and logistics. But if we are trying to do more with less, that could be a cost savings there that, a grant proposal that can think more creatively to offer some ideas to save money in that regard, that could be really useful. I think we did also see that both iterations of the past 2 grant cycles, there was either building the national sbeep.org website or doing a pretty major overhaul of the of the website. So in the language for this iteration of the grant, this new 5-year grant cycle, we're recommending considering to keep it as maintaining the national sbeep.org website. As in, we still, of course, need to have current and updated information, but not having to do a huge overhaul, new look and feel, but kind of continuing to maintain what's already been developed and saving a lot of cost there that had been previously used in the past 2 iterations of the grant cycle. So those are just a couple of ideas that I think save a lot of cost, which would allow more funding to go towards the annual training, because I think that was what we heard from a lot of folks on the National SB program was we would like more funding to go for these annual trainings. But we kind of have to take from somewhere in order to pad in other areas. So if that's the overall request, I think that could be done by, cutting some cost on the other 2 sections. So I hope that answers your question, Nancy. Did you have any other thoughts, or you want to? I know you're the current grantee, so if you had any other questions, feel free to come off mute and share them with us.
No, I think you're spot on. There's a few committees that are not going to be able to maybe won't have access or to hosting their own meetings. And so we were working towards that in year 5. And I think your suggestions are definitely spot on. I appreciate the fact that you said maintain the website, because that's huge. You're right. A lot of effort goes into really revamping, updating, and so that's important to understand where EPA's priorities are, so that we could funnel more effort into annual training. So thank you.
Sure. Absolutely. I don't want to steal all of Elnora's thunder. She is the project officer, and I'm trying to let her take the reins, of course, but I just know, having worked on this quite a bit since the beginning, I wanted to make sure to offer some of my kind of institutional or historical knowledge about the grant specifically. And but I know that Elnora is learning and is definitely kind of going through this whole process that goes into a new solicitation package and awarding of the new grant. So that'll be great. Elnora, did I cover everything? Is there anything that you want to share while we're here with everybody?
Oh, Paula, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, I know we have the full hour, but again, we don't have to stay on the entire time. I want to be sure to give everyone plenty of time and look at anything that we think might be useful. But if we've covered everything, we're happy to cut it here. So I'll give folks one last chance to ask any questions, come off mute, put it in the chat. And Mary has reminded us that yes, we will be sharing these slides. So for what we covered earlier in the slide deck, that will be sent out right away. And so you'll have that right away with all the live links. The recording that we plan to post on the website will probably take us a couple of days to edit it, just to kind of cut out any of the spare, things on the ends of the recording and get it over to our contractor to have it uploaded. But we will share that recording as well to make sure everybody has access that was not able to join us today. Because we want to encourage competition. We know here at the agency, we really encourage competition so that we can get the best possible grant experience and outcome for the program. So, and for, of course, the small businesses that we're hoping to support with compliance assistance. So this is an effort to do that by making this recording and making it available to everybody. I see a question that's, will the current website be given its entirety to the new provider? So yeah, that's a good question. So currently, there would have to be some process to like segueing over to a new administrator of the grant. I'm not fully in understanding as far as the IT that would go into that, but I think that's part of the agreement that, yeah, it would have to be fully sent over to the new grantee, assuming if KSU's PPI program does not continue on with the grant, they would work to make all of that available to the new grant recipient. Oh, does that answer your question, Nancy? Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
Nancy Crickman. I could speak to that just a little bit. The way that we've talked in-house about that is we have the GoDaddy licensure for nationalsb.org, and we would just have the new grantee take it over. Our site, though, I think we would want to keep our site up until the new grantee was ready to launch their site under the same URL. Exactly how that works, I'm not sure, but we currently are using a platform called Drupal 9, and by the time next year comes around, we will be upgrading to Drupal 11. It's just a more secure platform. And so you'd want to, it would all depend on what kind of platform your university is using. But it's easy to go into websites, as you know, and you can cut and paste or, take things from the website. We could share the documents that we have linked, but you could also simply download many of them. And so it would be a process on the new grantees' end, but it's very doable. And it's not like our website will go dark on August 1st if we don't have the grant. So I encourage people not to let that intimidate you. K-State will do whatever is needed or reasonable within reasonable aspects to make sure that any new grantee has the easiest access to the information.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. That's a good
Thank you.
question, and thanks for bringing it up. Hey, Lloyd.
Yeah. Yeah, hi. Nancy, thanks for that question, because our biggest problem would be our state IT section. Can we handle the website? Yes or no? So on transferring the URL and the Drupal mine, those are questions I have to ask the state IT office. That's out of our control. So, and then the other question, Paula, on the December or November 1st deadline, do you require an executive director's signature on that?
No, we were saying earlier that honestly, even just shooting us an email is fine because it's not a requirement. It's really just helping us kind of get a sense of how many applicants are planning to send in their submissions. So it does not have to be super formal. In fact, I would encourage you not to go to that trouble when I'm sure you'll be busy enough trying to pull together an application or a proposal, I should say.
Oh, yeah, because if you said yes, I couldn't get it by Friday. So
Yeah.
that'd be a no. So thank you.
Sure. And it's not like a commitment, I mean, if you think you're going to be planning to submit and then for some reason you don't, it's just to kind of help us plan, but it's not a commitment.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Other questions, thoughts, or concerns? Denise, I see you're on here. Thanks for joining and being willing to kind of listen in. Denise Sermons is our OSDBU director here. She's my boss. I just want to give her a chance to say hello or say any words if she is able to and wants to.
Well, thank you for that, Paula. And thanks to all of those that are joining on this call. The information is really helpful, and I was so thoroughly impressed by how much work went into providing resources that I'm sure would be very, very helpful for those who are considering applying. So I'm very grateful that you guys are interested. This is an important opportunity to support our states and ultimately the small businesses across the country. And so we're really happy that we're able to continue support for this cooperative agreement. We wish, to be honest with you, it could be more, but something is definitely better than nothing at all. But I do want to seize the opportunity to just commend our team in OSDBU for pulling this informational webinar together, and again, for providing great information. So one quick question from me for the team is just a little bit about the process after this meeting. We heard one question that we promised to get back with respect to reporting, so how we'll do that. And then relatedly, what happens following the submission, any time frame that those who submit should expect. We know that in August is the date we're projecting to begin the new agreement, but is there anything else they should be looking forward to before that date? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really great trigger to help me add some more detail there. So thanks, Denise, and thanks for joining. So as far as some of the questions that come up, especially like, for instance, the reporting specificity, I think what might be the easiest is, so we have on the website, we are required to post this recording of this webinar, but also to have a Q&A document that anytime any questions come in, we post the question as well as the response. So that could be a great way to kind of clarify any ambiguity throughout that comes up, and that will definitely be one of them. I think also we can hit reply all to some of these participants as well, if that's of interest. And yeah, as far as the process and timing, so what happens from here is we'll, be waiting very patiently for everybody to send in their submissions or their proposals. On the back end, what's happening here is we're pulling together a grant review panel, because that is a requirement for any time we have a grant. We have to make sure it's fair and competitive. So we have a few different members that provide that, as far as sitting on the panel review. And we try to get a mix of like somebody that's really within the team that's super familiar with this grant or this program, and then a mix throughout the agency to kind of spread out the kind of level of expertise. And really that's going to take a few months for us to, get the review in, make sure we have the panel scheduled and in place. And we also have to kind of pat ourselves time wise for any kind of issues that come up with, like, once we notify folks if they have not been selected, there may be a review period to go over. So there's kind of some things that kind of take some time. We actually have to kind of put the grant panel's submission in, get it routed for approval before we can make that kind of formal determination. Actually, the grants office, I believe, officially notifies the grantee that they've been selected for the award. So we put for May of 2025, that would be the very latest, but we're hoping it will be more like, springtime, that we can make at least some sort of communication on where things are tracking with that. I hope that's helpful. I'm kind of thinking that through myself because it's easy to kind of get stuck where you are right now. But yeah, so the Q&A doc will have more information about the reporting and any other questions that come in that we want to make sure everybody is aware of. And then we're hoping that the grant review panel will take a few months and we can get some more clarity to those that put in their proposals by the springtime. And I did see one more question here from Nancy Crickman. It looks like there's an expectation to host 3 conferences during the 5-year period. Is that correct? Yeah, so that was kind of, like I mentioned, the idea that there's going to be at least an every other year hosting of the annual training. We would like to see that continuation where EPA is kind of ensured that we've funded and can ensure there be an annual training every other year. But again, if the applicant wants to spread out their funds and host something every year, that's great too. We're open to that. But we wanted to ensure that at least every other year that the grant funded the annual training. All right. Any other last questions before we close out? Okay. Oh, I see somebody's come off mute. 785, do you have a question? Okay. All right, well, expect the slide deck. We will send that out shortly, and we will also share when our website has the recording and the FAQ document. That'll be up soon. Okay. Thanks again. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to hop off like that.
It's okay. Paula,
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I just sent you an email with the slides. I saved a copy, removed all the notes and comments, and sent it to you, like an Outlook attachment, and it's got the names of everybody that we sent the invite to.
Okay. Well, let's stop this recording. I see one person that maybe they're on another call. They don't realize they're still on. But we'll just go ahead.